Embark on a journey of faith and grace with Jesus Prayer and Therapy.
Goodbye, boring Mondays. Welcome to Jesus Prayer and Therapy, where you start your week right. Episode 7, Healing and the Waiting.
We're glad you're here. We're glad you're joining us. Thank you for watching. Thank you for the support. And we're just going to dig into a really kind of, I think like all the topics we've touched upon have been pretty hardcore. But share what the title of today is.
The title of today's episode is Healing and the Waiting.
Healing and the Waiting. There's so much to say.
So much. This could be a whole season in itself.
Season 2 might be just about
healing.
Who knows?
Right?
But we're going to just kind of keep it as short and to the point as we can. Right? The goal of today is just to get people thinking and maybe just some tools and reflection, right? A lot of times in the season of waiting, it is an invitation for healing. Yeah. It's an invitation for healing to ask God, okay, is there something, God, that you're wanting to prune in me? Is there something that
needs healing?
That needs healing, something that you're wanting to work on in me, right? So I think let's start with that reflection of like, what is this season of waiting? What is God trying to tell me in that? So, para ir calentando motor, para ir pensando. And we bought a picture people can see. It's a picture of us when we were
zoom in.
It's a picture of us as children. We thought that it's so important for us to remember that a lot of the things that kind of mold us as adults,
what happened in our childhood.
Yeah, it rooted from our childhood.
Mm-hmm.
So what is it that we learned in our childhood? We learned if we can trust the world and people around us. We learned if we are loved, if we're lovable, right? That's kind of a big one. We learned, for example, if that love was conditional or unconditional. If we had to kind of work for that love.
Mm-hmm.
That's huge. In our childhood, we also learned, our sense of identity, our sense of worth, self-esteem, value. And another one is that I think we don't pay attention to is that we also learned how to manage our emotions.
Oh, that's a big one.
How to problem solve, right? So I don't know, is this speaking anything to you?
It is. The problem solve, all the triggers that I have in my life, or that everything that like pulls a trigger in me, to react a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you were spot on until like, or at least I know that healing your inner child is so important. Mm-hmm. And like you said, we kind of had to reflect back on that. And I think the first step into beginning your healing journey is accepting that you need healing. So that's one. And I think that many of us, or I know like for sure me, sometimes we feel guilty to look back onto our childhood because our parents did the best they could, right?
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes it's important to recognize that the way this happened out in my childhood and the way that molded me to be who I am or how I'm reacting now as an adult needs healing. And it's not to blame anybody because anything that we struggle with, and it's personal to us, and there's no one to blame for that. And now like everything's into our hands, we're adults now and could take the steps that we need to healing. And it speaks to me in so many different ways, but in my healing journey right now, specifically with my father, I'm in that journey right now, still in the process of healing that. But I think that I have healed a lot of that wound that I had with the situation that happened in my childhood where my father was involved, and I became resentful towards him. And growing up, it just felt like he didn't love me. He wasn't really there for me because of one specific situation that happened, but it wounded me so badly. And I was bleeding onto it for the rest, like
in other areas
of
an adult.
Yeah.
And how did you come to that conclusion? Because I think as adults, we don't notice. We don't notice we're bleeding, right? To use that analogy. We don't notice that, okay, I need to work on that.
Right.
Like what was it for you that said, you know what, I need to reflect?
I noticed a pattern in my romantic relationships. Every time that when one of my relationships was ending, I thought my world was ending too, or that it needed to end.
And had a very strong reaction to failing relationships.
Yes.
Okay.
So that led me to therapy. And in therapy, I wanted to work on that. I thought the problem was that how I reacted to a breakup. And so therapy brought me back to not even the current breakup that I was experiencing, but the one before that, and slowly led me back. And not much time was spent on the breakups because it's nothing to do with that. Everything was rooted off of something else. The root was something else. And the psychologist knew that. And so she brought me all the way back to my childhood and how I learned things in my childhood. For one,
it was like an unmet need that you had.
Yes, I was being emotionally neglected, right? And it sounds like harsh, but it was like my parents were emotionally absent. And I think as a woman, it affected me more that it was my father. So then I was seeking that attention now the attention that I should have been receiving from my father. I was seeking it in my romantic relationships, and it was affecting that. It affected the way I reacted to breakups. It also brought up triggers within, like, while being in the relationships. If I felt ignored, Liz, I just wanted to throw hands. Like, you don't ignore me. But it was all rooting back from being felt unseen.
So the way it looked like was anger. Responded in anger. And like como the need to be very defensive, maybe. Is that kind of how you would, right away, like if they made a little comment or something like that, immediately you recognize it as like, I'm being unseen.
Yes.
That's how it was?
Yeah. Or just simply like the person was busy and it's like, you've been ignoring me all day. Like not having the reason,
Got it.
to understand like, okay, we all have lives.
Yeah. So because as a child, your unmet need was, I don't feel seen by my father because he was not able to be emotionally present as an adult. Little things like your boyfriend being busy all day. That was a trigger. Because then you felt, well, you don't care.
Yes.
Right? So your response, maybe the way you coped, as you learned to cope with that, was to become very defensive. Right? Maybe.
Yeah. That was one that helped me realize that I needed healing because of the pattern that I noticed there. And then when I started going to therapy, I also learned through the psychologist that I also on my end learned through my mother that you stay no matter what. You te aguantas. Like even though you don't deserve that or you shouldn't be being treated that way, you're staying. Right?
Yeah.
And like one little wound opens up so many more, Liz, because then I realized there, like, I did learn to just stay and take it no matter what in a relationship because I saw my mom do it. And you are learning these things as a child.
You do.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the wound, it creates a truth. You accept something to be true either about the world, right? Like what you noticed about your mom, or it creates a truth that you accept, even if it's a lie, but you accept that truth to be about you, right? Whether that be in that moment, I'm not important, or I need to be quiet and I need to stay. Those are little patterns that you learned along the way, and you carry them on with you.
You do.
Unconscious.
Unconsciously.
That's the crazy part of this.
Yeah, because I didn't know all this until I started seeking therapy and working on myself. Yeah.
Yes. And little did you know that this went all the way back to repetitive things. So now it's like that process of unlearning some of these things.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Unlearning.
That's how it's like an autopilot, I think we were saying.
Yes, it's autopilot. Yeah, you don't recognize. It's like driving a car. When you're first learning how to drive a car, you're thinking about like making that right turn, the left or right turn, and like putting your foot from the gas to the brake. But once you've done it so much, sometimes you don't even realize you've been driving for an hour already, and you're on autopilot. And that's how it is with these habits that we learn.
Yeah, we're on auto part of your norm, and then people can just say, "Pues es que así soy."
That's a big one.
Y se acaba la historia.
Yeah,
that's just how I am. Period. Yeah, and they don't make the effort to realize, well, you know what? That's not who you are. That's not who God intended you to be, and you can change. But it's just such an easier route to say,
"That's who I am."
So yeah, I'm short-tempered.
Or like I'm short-tempered. Like somebody's gonna love me this way.
Whatever. There's so many different ways, right?
Yeah,
and become people-pleasing. People can become workaholics because now we live in a culture where workaholics are like, oh my gosh, you're such a hustler, you're yay. But in reality, sometimes people are workaholics because they're trying to prove their self-worth because maybe that's what they learned. And it's I'm speaking about myself because yes, absolutely. It's just so interesting how the relationship with your parents really do affect you growing up. And it was same for me, you know. I recognized that I was basically kind of like a workaholic when the last 10 years of my life, when there was a point where I was doing so much school, internship, my agenda was jam-packed and I was like cracking. I see this stress, the eyes like twitching and you're, you know, like you start getting insomnia and you have all of this, but I felt like I couldn't stop. And I started noticing that I had a hard time saying no. I started noticing that if I had a moment of like, I'm going to sit on the couch and just relax, a few minutes in, I started feeling guilty because I put that as I'm being unproductive and I need to get up and keep hustling. To me, that started getting out of control when I started recognizing, why am I having a hard time relaxing? You know, and I probably still struggle with that a little bit, but I'm aware of it and I'm working on it. And all of this, just like you had therapy, I had a spiritual guide. I still have her. She's best thing ever. Spiritual guide is basically like Catholic counseling, right? How to see God in your life and in your present moments. She did a lot of self-work with me. She did a lot of let's walk you back to, you know, your childhood. Ay, boy. And she brought that up. She brought up that I'm trying to prove my worth and that I am lovable by working way too much. And so I said, you know what, I want to know where the root of this is. I want to see God because I need freedom from this. I can't live like this. It's become too much, but I can't stop. I don't know how to stop. And so I remember I went to the Blessed Sacrament and I just kind of sat there with God and I said, you know, show me this root. And I just started, you know, meditating on me, myself, my life. And God showed me like this memory of me in elementary school. I was in elementary school, the certificates of student of the month, whatever the word, all of them. Honor roll, Elizabeth Herrera, me. And I had this memory of me getting all these awards and, you know, you're in the multi-purpose room and you're sitting with your certificate, like so proud. And I remember, you know, super happy with the certificate and my dad's face. My dad, he smiled, he gave me affection, and I had that like emotional response from him that I wanted. Mm-hmm. And my dad, like most Hispanic older, you know, they have a hard time showing their affection.
Yeah, they don't know any better.
They don't know. Yeah. But as a kid, I internalized, I was like, oh, so all I have to do is work hard, get awards, and then I'm going to get that. I'm going to get that response from dad. That's what I'm going to do. And the moment I realized that, oh, it's like you opened a faucet. I couldn't believe.
Oh,
It's like we don't think about this.
you don't.
And I realized that, and God showed me. And to me, it was just, God took it even further. And he said, why do you feel that you have to prove your worth with me? And I was like, you're right, God.
Yeah.
I'm also applying this lifestyle, not just with people around me. I want to seek validation from others around me, but with you, I feel that I have to prove my worth with you, God. And God told me very clearly, like, don't do that with me.
Yeah.
I love you regardless. Yes.
That's so crazy, Liz, that you're saying that, because it's reminding me of when you have when your relationship with your father here on earth is not like the greatest, or there's stuff like emotionally, like emotional wounds from them that we, as I think especially as girls, we want them from our father. It affects our relationship with them, but then it also makes it harder to come closer into relationship with God. If your relationship with your earthly father is struggling, there's only so much closer that you can come to God.
Yeah.
And that's why it's so important to heal that relationship.
That's a barrier.
But yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's the motivation to want to heal, right? Because we want to better our relationship with God.
Mm-hmm.
And we want to be free from all of these chains that do get in the way of you experiencing full joy. And that's the goal. God wants to give us that freedom, that full joy,
true happiness.
But sometimes, we don't want to let things go, or we don't want to put the time into working in ourselves, right?
The time, or you realizing that you're already in a state of pain, but you realize like leaving this is going to cause me more pain. Like, for example, in relationships too, like you already know that relationship is causing you so much pain, so much sadness even. But then you think about the feeling of breaking up and having to go through that process, and you dread that. You don't want to go through that. You don't want to experience that. But like you said, in the season of waiting and stepping out of that relationship, or stepping out of whatever situation you're in, that is gonna put you in the season of waiting. God is calling you to heal as well.
And our wounds can be like an onion. We've reflected on this before. Where it's like you have to slowly peel it off. It's not just like, oh, okay, I saw it. There's so much to it.
So much.
So it's allowing, right? Step by step, right? Keep meeting with Jesus. Keep talking to him.
Yeah. And it truly is like peeling an onion.
Yeah.
And it reminds me of somebody truly is cutting onions. It reminds me of the peeling the onion. There's layers to everything, because in my process right now, I think that I'm healing my relationship with my father, but then that's opening up other ones that I also need to heal. Like that, I realized that then I started feeling that the another wound, that I had towards my mother now, like for taking so much. Or sometimes you hear them say, maybe unconsciously they say it around you, but like they say comments like, or they stay because por los niños, or they don't tell you directly, like in pláticas, and so then you feel at fault for that. Like, she had to take that because of me, and you have to heal that now. Now your relationship with your mother, and it just opened, like you said, it's an onion that you're peeling, and you're healing and healing, and it's a lifelong process. I believe that these triggers that we have, and the habits that we learned as children, we're gonna have to keep working on them, possibly for the rest of our lives. It's gonna get better. We're gonna learn how to react, or how to handle the situation better. I do believe that if you put in the right work, and but it also brings me to say of God, of how your humility, I think that he will appreciate more, even though you're going to keep messing up because we're not perfect. And we're probably these triggers are probably still going to cause us to react a certain way sometimes. For you to have the humility to ask for forgiveness to whoever you have to ask, or come back to God and ask him to help you with these things that you're struggling.
Forgive others, forgive yourself. Also, that's part of the equation. But you're absolutely right. Awareness, and even though just being aware of that wound doesn't maybe mean that you're going to heal right away, it's going to start a process, right? But allowing yourself to keep going through that process and not giving up, like you're saying, it'll bring you to a place of grace and humility.
Yeah.
Versus pride, versus saying, I'm fine. Y el ojo temblando. Like, you're not fine.
You're not.
You lack peace, like, clearly. Yeah. And even if you keep making mistakes, because imagine you've been coping and you've been doing the same thing for years, right? For me, whatever I learned, this whole workaholic thing, I learned it as a kid. Yeah. Been like, I don't know, 20 years. So to unlearn,
it's going to be a process. Yeah.
But it's okay to keep making mistakes. It's okay as long as you come back to God.
And through that process, coming back to God. And then through that process too of the healing, if you allow yourself to experience it, I know that in my experience, you're able to see all the little things now. Like, for example, my dad has always shown up for me, and he loves me, but it's not till now that I'm going through this process of healing with my relationship with him that there was one time that I was having a really rough day. I was feeling really sad, going through, all the roller coaster emotions of a breakup and stuff. And he noticed that I was sad. I thought we went out to breakfast and I thought, like, por fuera, I'm fine, like my parents will never notice like everything that I'm feeling inside and smiling and whatever. But inside, I knew what I was feeling and he noticed it. And for him, he didn't bring it up during breakfast. He brought it up after. Actually, we were like with family the whole day. But then after, when he was alone, he called me and he's like, I know there's something wrong with you. He's like, te miro muy like agitada, the way he talks, he's like, yeah. And that just brought me to tears. Just that simple question, knowing that he cared that I was going through something and asked. I was like, that within itself was like so much healing for me to hear him ask, are you okay? Because my whole life I went, he didn't know if I was okay or not. It was just, he cared that he had a roof and food for us and everything was fine. And I don't blame him for it. It's what he learned and he did the best that he could, or it's also a different love language. Right.
His love language is to provide or acts of service or, making sure you guys are taken care of externally.
Yeah.
But the love language that you were seeking was that emotional, maybe the words of validation, or, you were seeking that by him asking you that question, it was like,
yeah, like finally, yes. I'm like, yeah. And in that moment too, I instantly felt my connection with God, because all I could do was thank God for like leading my dad to ask me that, or helping him see that I truly wasn't okay and I was going through something. I did talk to him about it. I didn't know. I was like, no, everything's fine. But that question, it brought so much healing to me. And instantly my connection with God was to like thank him. Thank him for that, for allowing my dad to ask me that. And then just a recent one, which was yesterday, it happened again. So I got into a car accident, thought I totaled my car. Turns out that he's been working on my car. And I'm not going to have to stress about that anymore. And the way he's just like, my brother sent me a video that my car is up and running again. And my dad's like test driving it. And just seeing him drive, and it made me reflect, like my dad has always shown up for me this way, but I could never see it. Because my wound, I was seeing him through the eyes of that wound, of that hurt. And I wasn't able to see every detail that my dad has done throughout my whole life.
all the other acts of love
to show his love for me. And it just made me, and it just goes in deeper with reflecting all the times where we have felt that God isn't there in our pain. He truly is. Or in our struggles, like my pain when I was going through those emotions, my dad was there, so was God. You know, even in the material things, like with my car, I feel that God is there through it all, in our struggles and our pain. And if we're hurt or we're not willing to open ourselves up to heal, we're never really going to see all those little details.
Because you can also see God through the lens of that wound. And instead of focusing on all the other ways that God shows you his love, you're seeing God and what you perceive as his absence, right? We perceive it. God is never absent.
Yeah,
never abandons us. He suffers with us, right? But you hit a good point there that that can really severely affect your relationship with God.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like you said, it's when you start that process of healing, not only are you now able to see things so differently and better your relationship with the people around you, with your father, but with God. You feel that your communication with God has improved since your communication's been better with your dad?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. It all has gone, all the work has gone in together, like merged into one. Like, I know. Yeah. I was doing so much. I was like going to therapy, life coach. I was going to you. I was like,
you put in the
going to the Blessed Sacrament like twice a week, and I was running there. So working out while going, I was doing everything together, but everything merged in together. And healing the wound with my father helped me come closer in relationship with God.
And the process continues.
Oh yes, for sure. I'm still in the process.
But now you have awareness.
Oh yeah.
And that gives you so much. It gives you some of the power back because you don't let it control you as easily. It's going to be a natural response for you to maybe feel, unseen again. But then now you're like, no. That's a wound from my past. My dad's showing me my love this way or whoever your next relationship or whoever.
And it brings hope.
It
just brings so much hope to know that if I keep allowing God to work in me, like what can he do in my next relationship? If it's the desires of your heart to, like, for example, me, like get married, have a family, like if I keep allowing God to do this work in me, I can have a beautiful relationship when
you're breaking chains.
Yeah.
That's what it is. I always think it's funny when people say, when they complain about their parents and say, I'll never be like that with my kids. But if you don't put in the work to heal, unconsciously, the chain continues.
Yeah, it will.
And then years pass, and it's like, I am just like my mother.
Yeah.
What I said I would never do, I'm doing.
You do the same thing, or sometimes even worse, because the chain keeps getting thicker and heavier. And
that's true.
Yeah.
And I wanted to point out that through our trauma and our wounds, the devil is always perverting, destroying, and distorting our truth, right? He doesn't want us to recognize our true worth and our true identity because he wants to keep us from experiencing that full joy in Christ. And so if he can keep us away from recognizing that truth and from being free, we're kept hostage to all of this, right? So I heard this nun say, and I loved it. She said, you need to take your suffering, your wound, your pain, all of that, take it from the hands of the devil and put it in the hands of God. Because if you don't do that, the devil's going to play with your suffering and he's going to keep you in the yes, forever if you let it be. So it's like, if you put it in the hands of God, he can do amazing things. Well, everything that was meant for your harm, he can use it for your good. And I just want to say, because something that I learned about me that was just kind of huge about this was through a wound that I had as a child, I believed so many lies about myself as well. When I was maybe around that age in that picture, I had a female cousin that molested me. And with that, I believed the lie of shame that I'm at fault. I felt like my opinion didn't matter. Me saying no didn't matter. And after that, how do you tell, a trusted parent when you're questioning what the heck is this, So I believed the lie of just you don't matter, you're not important. And it's almost like my voice was muted, and I remember I didn't know how to tell my parents.
Yeah.
So what I did was I wrote a letter. And I know, ironically, my sister used to read the Bible. So I put the letter in the Bible telling her what happened sometime later. And so sure enough, my sister found it, told my parents. And it's all about what we felt that we needed, right? I didn't have that emotional response, that need was not met. Because again, I think, what can parents do when your children come to you to something like that? How do you respond?
Yeah.
My parents had no idea.
Yeah.
Right? They did the best they could. But in my memory, they did nothing, in my memory. Mm-hmm. In my memory, they simply took me to a therapist, which I'm grateful because it did help. But the need that I had at that emotional response of my parents telling you, hey, we weren't there to protect you. We're here now. There's nothing to be ashamed of. Those things that I needed, they weren't received from them. I needed to hear it from them. I might have heard it from a therapist, but that's not where I needed to hear it. Yeah. So I grew up with this thought of, don't inconvenience people, don't speak up, just stay quiet, keep things to yourself. And regardless of how you feel, it doesn't matter.
Like the mute, right?
It was mute. It was a mute for my emotional, how I was feeling. And so, of course, that affects me. And it can, I now have some awareness. Thanks be to God. I had no idea. I started noticing this since I was married. And I was struggling to speak with my husband about certain things. And I'm like, wait, hold up. Why am I struggling to speak up, So here I go with my spiritual guide. This is going on. And through, reflection and she took me through some exercises. This came up. God's mercy showed me roots again. Roots, that's such key. And so part of my healing of this was I wrote another letter and I went with my parents. This was not that long ago, maybe, 2 years ago. I went with my parents and I started by saying, Mom and Dad, my lip was like, they probably couldn't understand a word I was saying, but I was trembling. I was so nervous. But I started by saying, Mom and Dad, I am reading this and I'm bringing this up because that 5-year-old me needs to say it. She couldn't say it years ago and she's felt muted. But now I have a voice and I want to use my voice. Oh, And I read them the letter of how I felt and all these things. And I don't think I was asking for forgiveness. Again, it was just about giving that child a voice, so that I can have that voice now and not carry this, right? Not carry it into my marriage, not carry it into the rest of my life. And so it was such a powerful moment of healing because para empezar, I wasn't looking for my parents to ask for forgiveness. I didn't feel that they needed to. I wasn't blaming them, But my mom, that is not very expressive, turned to me and said, "I'm so sorry. We weren't there to protect you." And that, to me,
those words, right?
Oh, I did not know I needed to hear that. I had no clue. But when she said it, you physically feel like a warmth and just come over you. And I was like I told Mom, I don't blame you for anything, but thank you for your words, And my dad explained that he did the best he could. He said he even called the cops and had me talking to, I don't remember any of this. He said he went above and beyond. He didn't know what to do, right? I didn't know that. In my memory, my dad just kind of like, okay, well, we're going to take you to therapy. And that was it. And that kind of hurt me a little bit. But when he told me, no, I was with authorities. I wanted to like do all this and that. That was also healing, because I was like, oh.
And to hear that, because sometimes the trauma blocks these memories where, like you said, in your memory, they did nothing. But in reality, they did do all these things, but the trauma blocks all these memories. And it's like selective memory almost.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The devil keeps you hostage.
Yes.
So many different ways with these things. But that just, it's so much, it opens the door to freedom. I still have many opportunities where I have to practice using my voice. It's a continuous thing.
Right.
But when I notice it, I know, and I talk to myself and I talk to God and I go to God, God, help me. Right. It's living that moment and heal. That also brought healing with my relationship with God, because I wasn't sure, a little bit internally, it's like feelings of abandonment from God, but it's reliving that memory with God with you there. And yes, it's going to hurt. Again, I had my spiritual guide to walk me through all of that process, but it's very delicate, but it helps to relive it with God there with you, suffering with you, right? Because he was suffering with you. And so that also healed that feeling of abandonment from God, and it only bettered my relationship. So I think that's a good invitation to reflect and to know that take those wounds from the hands of the devil and give them to God and let God do the work in you, right? And Philippians 1:6 talks about give so much hope, right? That he who has begun a work in you will complete it. That gives us so much hope. And I hope that this resonates with everybody listening. And I think, you've given your examples of how it's resonated with you too.
Yes. And I want to thank you, Liz, for sharing that. I am so positive that it'll help so many people out there. I hope that anybody listening that knows of someone or themselves could relate, to really reflect and invite others to also begin their healing journey. And God is calling everyone to heal, in the many areas and all the possible areas that we can have those wounds or traumas in. And I just wanted to highlight one key point that you said of like talking to that 5-year-old Liz, because I think that that's something that I learned in therapy as well, where the psychologist asked me to go into, they walk you through these things, and like your spiritual guide did as well. And it's talking to that 5-year-old Liz or that 5-year-old Vane, and letting them know, like, for you, it was like, give her a voice, give that 5-year-old Liz a voice. And for me, it was let Vane know, like, before you didn't know, you didn't have someone to hug you and be there for you, but now you do. And I'm here to show up for that Vane, for that 5-year-old Vane, as you now showing up for that 5-year-old Liz. And just invite everybody to like look at the patterns in your life. What's not causing so much peace or happiness? Do you notice a pattern? Maybe that's where you need to start. And then that's when your onion will start peeling, and you'll find all these other things that you had to work on as well.
And people around you will tell you too.
Oh yeah, it was like the story.
It's like, why are you this way? Why are you that? And people learn to cope in many different ways, right? There's many different kinds of addiction: drugs, alcohol, shopaholics, gamblers, and workaholics. And there's so many different kinds of addictions that we do need to pay attention. What are we addicted to? And what can that be? What is that saying about you? What's unmet need are you trying to fill? And yeah, I'm a big voucher for therapy, clearly. But it's interesting to be in therapy and to see like the other side of how our brain works, and how, as we're growing up, we're learning different things. And if things are not met, that's going to affect you, but there's always hope.
There's always hope. And I think that it's kind of, we're in a generation where it's kind of opened up for it to be more of a norm to go to therapy. But I feel that many of us are still in that cycle of only like crazy people go to therapy, or only if you're really bad, you go there. And it's like, no, like be open to it. Be curious.
Yeah.
Curious to what God can do when you begin that process of healing. Because I think that that's what helped me too, Liz. Being curious to what will happen differently if I do things differently. Mm-hmm. That curiosity. Like, so be curious onto what could be different in your life.
Yes, it doesn't have to be that way.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to live in such lack of peace.
Right.
You don't.
Yeah.
The world has prettier colors.
Yeah.
Yes, that's very true. And there's so many books. If you Google Catholic inner healing books, you're going to get so many, right?
Mm-hmm.
If people don't have the ability to go to therapy or whatever, get a good book, or a good audio, or listening to here. This is the first start.
Yeah, and listen to us every Monday.
But yes, I think it's bringing all of that out. And I think I just want to finish by, there is the story that is one of my faves. It's in the book of Acts, chapter 16, verse 16. It talks about Paul, right, the apostle, and Silas, and they were preaching, and of course they're taken into prison for preaching the gospel, and they are severely beat, and it says that they were taken into the furthest cell in prison, and at midnight. So I'm thinking, they are wounded, right? They were severely beat. They were taken into the deepest. The cells are, me imagino, and their times were very hideous. Not like now they're kind of, air conditioned and all this stuff, but like, deep into the cell, and it's midnight, like the darkest hour, right? The darkest time of night. And what are they doing in the cell? What do they start doing? They start worshiping. And their worship and their hymns and their, alabanza to God is so profound and so heartfelt that it like touches heaven, and an earthquake happens, and their chains, they were chained up, right? These chains are broken and the cell is open, and the guard, the Roman soldier guard or whoever is, that was watching them, witnessing this, converted and asked them, what do I need to do to be saved, right? And he converts, he takes them to his home, and his whole family is baptized. So what can we learn from this? I invite everybody to go read it, Acts chapter 16. We learned that in their darkest moment, in their wound, in their hurt, they worshiped, they invited God into that. And we can do the same. We can invite God into that dark, dark area, right? That we don't even want to see, and invite him there, and allow his light to break our chains from that, and break us free from whatever's keeping us hostage to reaching full joy and full peace, or whatever, from experiencing truly the fullness of God's presence in our life. And when you do that, the fruit of allowing yourself to heal from your wounds,
everyone around you,
people around you can heal also. Yes. And they see, hey, how are you suddenly happier and more joyful? And who is this new person? And you point to God, and that can get them closer to God. And so that can be a motivation for us to keep working on ourselves and keep, letting God to do the work. Even if it hurts more to stay the way we are.
Mm-hmm.
So let that be our prayer, right?
That's so good to reflect on.
Yeah, to just let God in. So we'll wrap up with we have a prayer for inner healing, and we invite listeners, if you feel called to pray with us, we're going to go ahead and ask God to come and heal.
In the name of the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit. Healing heart of Jesus, enter into my wounded heart. Jesus, I invite you into the pain, this pain that has turned into anger, pride, and resentment. Envelop me in your most sacred heart of mercy, love, and forgiveness. Jesus, I understand this wound will take time to heal. I understand this healing may at times be painful and initially may not even feel like healing at all. But I trust in you, Jesus. I trust in your mercy and that you only desire goodness and love for me. I trust that you desire for me to be transformed so that I may be your goodness, love, and mercy to others. Jesus, enter into my pain and heal my wounded heart. Show me true love, the love of your most sacred heart. Root out all that is not of you and fill those hollow places in my heart with the healing warmth of your love. May your mercy be a soothing balm for my soul. May your gentle touch repair the tears and war-torn areas of my heart that have been bruised and battered, torn and afflicted, dragged through the mud and left for dead. Jesus, enter into the dark and dreary places, the places I dare not or let anyone else enter or go alone or for fear I may not be able to handle what I see or what I may do should I find myself there alone. Jesus, I know you will be gentle and will never let me see or experience more than I can bear. Jesus, heal my wounded heart, mend my soul, and shine your light of truth to dispel all darkness and despair, doubt, and shame. Fill my heart with hope, peace, and your healing mercy. Jesus, may my heart be vessel of your love. May I be a witness of your divine mercy and healing. Mary, Mother of Jesus, my mother, envelope me in your immaculate heart and wrap me in the warmth of your love. Do not let me be led astray. Carry me to the foot of the cross if I cannot walk. Lift my eyes and heart. So love, do not let me be led astray. Carry me to the feet of the cross if I cannot walk. Lift my eyes and heart so I see the gentle, loving gaze of Jesus upon me as he is suspended between heaven and earth, while interceding on my behalf for my sins, the sins of those who have hurt me, and for all sinners who have or will ever live. Mary, my mother, come be a mother to me now. My dear Jesus, enter into my heart and be with me always, now and for eternity, through the same Christ our Lord. Amen.
Amen.
In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit.
Thank you for joining us. If you feel that anything that you've learned today may help somebody else, share it. Share it with somebody else. Don't keep this treasure to yourself. So share, like, subscribe, all the above, and see you next time.
See you next time. Thank you for listening.